Hi there everybody, thanks for joining me. I would like to just give you some inspiration as to what you can do with all those leftover bits and pieces of candles. You know, the ones that get down to about a third from the bottom and then they don't look very nice anymore, or perhaps they don't burn very well because the wick has come to an end. So one of the things that you can do is just to simply take a terracotta pot, and if it has a hole in the bottom of it, like this one does, then you need to cut a circle of card that you can put there so that your wick will come through the other end. Okay, you need to get proper candle wick so that your candle burns effectively. And then what you're going to do is just to take two little pieces of press stick, we call it, or you might call it blue tack. Anyway, you know, the kind of sticky stuff that the kids use for posters. Put that on opposite sides of your little terracotta pot, and then take a skewer and just simply securely press that in. Then you can actually take your wick and you can wrap it around that so that your wick stays centered in your pot while you are busy. Now with the old candles that you have, you're going to simply cut those up into blocks, little squares or little chunks. And then you're going to take some old household candles, plain white. I normally take if I've got colored chunks, and you're going to pop them in an old tin. Now if you have a look at this tin, I've actually just squished the corner so that when I'm melting this wax, I've got a little spout that can pour it. So my old candles with the wick are still going to go in there, because once this wax has melted, then obviously I'll be able to retrieve the wick with a little skewer. So having chopped up your candle pieces, you're going to pop them in here. You're going to melt your wax, and once your wax has melted, you're going to simply pour that over the chips that you've got to make a candle, and this is what they look like. So here you'll see I've had some yellow and some red and some purple, and the wax, when it's initially poured in, is quite warm, so it'll melt some of the colors together. But you can see that it actually has taken the shape of the terracotta pot. And if you wanted your wax to be white, you could just simply add a bit of stearic acid into that. That will make your candle wax really white. But this is a lovely way to be able to use up those scraps of candle so that you're not wasting them and you can create something else. It works well in a terracotta pot simply because you're working with chunks. It's not so easy in molds, but you could try it depending on the shape of your mold. Having said that, I want to just explain to you a few things about melting wax that are very, very important. So first of all, remember that your container or your tin is going to be hot, so you need to handle that with some oven-proof gloves. Secondly, you never put your container with your wax directly on the stove, because then you are in a situation where you might have a fire. So what I would normally do is take my electric frying pan and put some water in there, and then put my tin into that so that it effectively creates a double boiler. Or you could simply just take a frying pan and put your tin in there. And you want to wait until the wax has just melted. Now normally candle makers work with thermometers and they're able to measure the temperature of the wax. But having taught candle making for many, many years, I found most people didn't want to invest in the thermometers because it was just going to be a fad. You know, they're going to do it for now and then be finished. So you just wait until it's just melted. If you have left your wax on the stove and it does get quite hot and you're not sure what temperature it is, just take it off the stove, let it cool down a little bit, and as soon as it starts to get slightly milky, then you can pour it, because you don't want it to be extremely hot. Otherwise, if you have a whole variety of colors in your candle, you're going to find that they just melt, and then you might just end up with brown, depending on what you've put there. Obviously, blue and yellow will make green. The other thing with making with candles is that you never leave the stove unattended, because the wax, if it does get very hot, could be flammable, and you don't want to do that. You don't flick water anywhere near your candle wax, because if it's hot, as I experienced when I was a child making shocking pink candles, I flicked my wet hands into the hot wax and it just shot up and went all over the kitchen ceiling. And that was my school holidays, basically scraping wax off the ceiling and the counters, which wasn't a lot of fun. And then the other thing is, when you're working with candles and wax, it does get a little bit messy because sometimes you make mistakes or you spill things. So I normally like to put down a thick wad of newspaper on my counter. So when I say thick wad, about 6 sheets, and I cover my counter completely with that. And then if I do spill wax, once the wax has cooled, you can peel it up off there. It sometimes does lift the print, but don't worry about that. If you have candles that you're going to be chopping up and they have got a little bit of black in them from when you've lit the wick, then if you melt the wax first and then you just put it through a bit of muslin or a little bit of a fairly porous cotton cloth, then you'll find that that residue stays behind. But then once you've done that, you would need to just put that on a baking sheet so it can cool, and then you can cut it into blocks to be able to make this candle. So this is just a walk through of what you can do with the wax as opposed to an actual demonstration of it. But please be very, very aware of the safety aspects. Don't leave children unattended working with wax, and make sure you don't leave it unattended, and always work with it in a double boiler so that you don't get the wax getting to a point where it wants to be flammable. I hope this gives you some inspiration, and my candle, when it was finished, will be in my pot. And there I have something that's really nice and portable. I've done a little bit of serviette decoupage on the outside, and you will be able to work with it. This candle, it was obviously made in a slightly bigger pot, so it is a little bit bigger than this one, but nevertheless, it's nice and portable for when you're working outside at the barbecue or whatever, and also you won't burn your hands. Hope this gives you some inspiration and a small project to do that doesn't take much time. Bye for now.